The thing about being the person people call in an emergency is that you don't decide to be that person. You just answer the phone enough times, in enough situations, and eventually everyone who knows you understands that you will pick up, that you will show up, that whatever the thing is, you are not going to let it go unanswered. I answered the phone that night. Then I closed my laptop and put my jacket on and drove 40 minutes in the rain to an airport I had quietly promised myself I was finished with, to pick up a woman I had quietly promised myself I was finished with, and somewhere on the highway in the dark, with the rain coming down in a way that made the road ahead look like a question, I understood that I had made both of those promises for the same reason, not because they were true, because I needed them to be. My name is Owen Harte. I was 36, a restoration architect, which is the kind of job that sounds more interesting than it explains, so I'll try. I take old buildings apart, figure out what they were supposed to be before other people's decisions covered the original intention over, and I put them back in a way that respects what they were while making them usable again. A Victorian schoolhouse that became an office building that became nothing. A rail depot that sat empty for 20 years while the city grew around it like water around a stone. A mill that flooded and was given up on and left to develop its own ideas about what it wanted to be. The work requires patience and a kind of forensic care. You have to read the evidence of what was intended before you can decide how to honor it. I had spent 12 years doing that and I was still not tired of it, which is probably the clearest thing I can tell you about who I am. I lived in a second-floor apartment in Columbus, in a building that had itself been a warehouse in the 1920s. Brick construction, timber framing, ceiling heights that made no economic sense by modern standards, which is exactly why I was there. The bones were visible. The original brick showed through in the kitchen. I had built a drafting table against the east-facing windows from salvaged lumber and spent most of my evenings there, drawing or reviewing or simply sitting with the light while it lasted, which in November wasn't long. I had been single for 11 months. That had not been my intention. I don't think it is ever anyone's intention, exactly. Her name was Delia Marsh. We had been together for 2 years and 4 months, which I know with that kind of precision because the precise number is one of those things you can't seem to stop knowing even after you've decided to stop keeping track. She was a consultant, the kind who travels, a different city most weeks, a different problem, a different set of people who needed her to come in and explain to them what they were doing wrong and then leave. She was very good at it. She was also, by the end, very good at being somewhere else. We had not ended badly. That was the particular difficulty of it. We had ended quietly, on a Tuesday afternoon in November, in my kitchen, when she looked at me from the other side of the island, with the expression of someone who had been trying to say something for long enough that the saying of it had become the last thing she had energy for. She said she didn't think she was what I needed. She said it carefully, chosen words, the way she chose everything, and she meant it kindly, and she was. In some ways I wasn't ready to admit at the time. Probably right. Not entirely. But probably, in the ways that mattered. I had wanted something she couldn't quite locate in herself to give. Not love. She had that. But the willingness to be somewhere fully. To put her carry-on down and stay inside a life rather than passing through it on the way to the next thing. She moved through the world like a person who was very good at the current assignment, and always already thinking about the one after. I had thought, when we started, that I could be the thing that made her want to stop moving. That turned out to be the kind of thinking that doesn't survive contact with the truth of a person. She moved her things out over a weekend. I helped her. We were civil and careful with each other in the way of people who have decided that the ending doesn't have to match the middle. We said we'd stay in touch, which is the thing people say at the end of things when they want to be kind and can't think of anything kinder. We had not stayed in touch. Until the phone rang on a Tuesday in October, 11 months later, at 7:43 in the evening. I was at the drafting table. I had been looking at drawings for a mill conversion in a township east of the city, a project I had been circling for 3 months, trying to find the entry point, the thing that would tell me what the building needed. The call interrupted that process, which I cannot honestly say I minded. The number was hers. I knew it before I looked. There are numbers you don't forget. Owen. Her voice had a quality I hadn't heard in it before. Not distress exactly. Not quite. More like the particular briskness of a person who is holding something together with the sheer force of efficiency, and would prefer not to examine why. My flight got cancelled. I'm at the airport. The next one isn't until tomorrow at noon and I don't. She paused. I don't have anyone here. Can you come get me tonight? I should have hesitated. I did not hesitate. Which terminal? I said. Arrivals at Columbus is familiar to me in the way things become familiar when you've been there often enough. The particular arc of the upper drive, the way the light inside goes yellow and flat under the fluorescence, the wall of glass doors that keeps the outside out until someone comes through them. I had picked Delia up from this airport more times than I could account for. Coming back from Seattle, coming back from Atlanta, from Denver, from wherever the week had taken her. The black carry-on I could identify at 30 feet. The way she always found me in the crowd before I found her, because she was always scanning, always locating the exit before she'd finished walking into the room. I had not been back since she left. I parked in the short-term garage on the level where I always used to park, out of habit, which I noticed and chose not to examine. Then I went inside to wait by the glass doors. She came through the glass doors 11 minutes after I arrived, the black carry-on behind her, the coat I recognized, camel-colored, belted, the one she wore when she was traveling somewhere that was going to take her seriously. She was on her phone, finishing something, and then she looked up and she saw me, and she stopped for just a second. Just a second. Then she kept walking. You came fast, she said. I was already at my table. Wasn't hard to leave. She looked at me sideways, the way she used to when she was deciding whether something I'd said was straightforward or something more. I had said it straightforwardly. She seemed to land there. Thank you for coming, she said. Don't mention it. She did the small smile that wasn't quite a smile. More like the acknowledgement of one. You always hated that expression. I still do, I said. This way. It was raining seriously by the time we got to the car, the kind of rain that had made a decision about the evening and was not taking questions. She ran the last 10 feet and got in on the passenger side, pulling the door shut and pushing the wet hair back from her face, and she sat for a moment just looking at the rain on the windshield. The way it came down in the parking garage lights turned everything outside into something slightly impressionist. I'm sorry, she said, for calling. You don't have to be sorry for that. I thought about it before I did. She was looking straight ahead. I went through the other options first. And? There weren't any that didn't cost more than calling you. She said it simply, like a problem she'd worked through. My sister is in Portland. The people I know here are work people. I didn't want... She stopped. I didn't want to explain myself to someone who was going to make it into a thing. I put the car in reverse. Where am I taking you? I said. A pause. Longer than the question required. I don't know, she said. I hadn't gotten that far. I looked at her. She was looking at the rain doing its work on the windshield. Her jaw was set the way it got when she was working through something she hadn't decided to say yet. There was a small crease across the collar of the coat where she'd been sitting on the plane for 3 hours, and her mascara had tracked slightly from the run through the rain, just at the outer corner of her left eye, and she hadn't fixed it. Delia always fixed those things immediately. The fact that she hadn't told me something about where her attention actually was. You can stay at mine, I said. Couch pulls out. She looked at me. Owen. It's raining, I said. Whatever hotel you're thinking of downtown is going to charge you $400 on a Tuesday because your flight canceled, and they know you have no options. You leave at noon tomorrow. It's one night. She held my gaze for a moment, working through something. Okay, she said. Thank you. Don't mention it, I said. The small, not quite smile appeared again. A real one this time, I thought. Barely, but real. I had not been in a car with her for 11 months. That was the first thing I noticed. How familiar the proportion of it was. How the car felt different in its own dimensions with another person in it, as though it had been slightly the wrong size all year without my knowing. The way she sat slightly angled toward the door, one elbow on the armrest, which she had always done, as if she was keeping one foot metaphorically near the exit. The way she navigated with her eyes even as a passenger, noting turns, tracking the route, filing the information the way she filed everything, quietly and completely and without being asked. The rain was heavier now. The wipers found their rhythm. How is the mill project, she said. I glanced at her. How do you know about the mill project? You posted drawings on your website. A pause. I checked. Sometimes. I kept my eyes on the road. It's not coming together yet, I said. I can see what it wants to be. I just can't find the way in. You always said that. Before the good ones. Did I? Mm-hmm. She looked out the window. You'd go quiet for a week and then one morning you'd show up knowing exactly what needed to happen. Marcus used to say. She stopped. She had been about to say something about my old project partner, and she stopped because she had remembered where she stood in the geography of my life now. Outside the radius, no longer owed the casual reference. You can say his name, I said. It's fine. I know. She was quiet for a moment. I'm aware that I don't have the same access I used to. Something in the car got quieter. Not unpleasant. Just real. No, I said. But you're not a stranger either, she looked at me. I felt it without looking back. What am I then? She said. I thought about it. Complicated, I said. She laughed. A real one, short and slightly surprised. The sound of it moved through the car, and then the wipers took another pass at the rain. My apartment was the same as she had known it, which I was aware of the moment she walked in the way you suddenly see your own space through someone else's eyes and notice what stayed. The drafting table against the east windows. The original brick showing through in the kitchen, which she had always said should be sealed, and I had always said no. The lamp I'd found at an estate sale that she'd told me was impractical. And she was right. It threw about half the light a room needed. But the shade was a deep green glass, and it turned the light below it into something almost amber, and I wasn't willing to give that up for the practical version. She saw it the moment she walked in. Still the lamp, she said. Still the lamp. She set her carry-on next to the door and stood in the middle of the living room and looked around slowly. Something in her expression was doing something I couldn't quite name. Not sadness exactly, more like the recognition you get when you return to a place that had been living in your memory as a general impression, and it turns out to be entirely specific and stubbornly itself. You put shelves in, she said. Last spring. She walked over to them. They ran floor to ceiling on the east wall, built from reclaimed white oak I'd pulled from a demolition project in Clintonville, and they held drawings and models and a handful of books and the architectural fragments I accumulated, the way some people accumulate nothing in particular. Pieces of old molding, a section of cast iron railing, a small terracotta face from a building on 3rd Street that had come down in a brownfield demo 3 years ago. She picked up the terracotta face and turned it over in her hands. I don't remember this one, she said. Came down after you left. She looked at it. He looks annoyed. He spent 80 years looking at the same corner, I said. And now the corner's a parking structure. I'd be annoyed. She smiled at the face. A quiet one to herself. Then she set it back in exactly the position it had been in. Not approximately, exactly. That was Delia. She put things back the way they were supposed to be. She always had. The problem was she applied that quality to other people's things more readily than to her own. I'll make up the couch, I said. I put clean sheets on the pull-out, and she disappeared into the bathroom and came out in what she traveled in. An old t-shirt, leggings, her hair up in the way she put it up when she was done pretending. The version of herself she had only let appear in private. I had forgotten and then remembered in the same moment that I had been private for her once, that I had been the place she came back to when she was done being visible to everyone else. She stood in the bathroom doorway and watched me making up the couch. You don't have to do it perfectly, she said. I know, I said. I'm doing it anyway. She was quiet for a moment, then, Owen, yes. Are you seeing someone? I smoothed the corner of the sheet. No. Are you okay? I looked up at her. Are you asking because you want to know, or because you need to know before you can say whatever you're working towards saying? She leaned her shoulder against the doorframe and considered me with the direct, level quality that I had always either admired or found exhausting depending on the day and the direction it was aimed. Both, she said. I'm okay, I said. I'm not fine, but I'm okay. Those are different. She nodded once, slowly. I think about the Tuesday, she said, in your kitchen. I do too, I said. I said things that were true. A pause. And I think I also said things that were not wrong exactly, but incomplete. And I've had 11 months to figure out what the incomplete part was. I finished with the sheet and straightened up and faced her. What was the incomplete part? I said. She looked at me from the doorway. I said I wasn't what you needed, she said. I think what I actually meant was that I didn't know how to be what you needed without losing something I was still trying to hold on to. Something I couldn't even quite name at the time. And I handled not knowing that by making it a statement about you instead of an honest statement about me. She stopped. That wasn't fair to you. The room had gone quiet around us. The rain had backed off to something gentler, tapping on the window rather than making a case. No, I said. It wasn't. She didn't apologize. Delia didn't apologize for things she had done deliberately. She named them and stood next to them and let them be named, which I had always respected even when it was the thing that cost me the most. Okay, she said, quietly. I just needed to say that. Okay, I said. She pushed off the doorframe and crossed the room and stood in front of me. Close enough that I could see the tiredness in her eyes that she'd been carrying all evening, underneath the efficiency, underneath the put-together surface. She looked up at me with the quality of attention that went all the way down, the kind that didn't look away from what it found. I held it, because looking away would have been the wrong thing, and I had always known the right thing from the wrong thing, even when both of them cost something. Thank you for coming to get me, she said. Not just tonight, all the times. I understood what she meant, the whole 2 years. Every flight, every late arrival, all the times I had been the fixed point she came back to, and then left again. You were always worth coming to get, I said. She left the next morning at 10, to get to the airport by 11 for the noon flight. I made coffee. She had slept well, or said she had, which with Delia tended to mean the same thing. She didn't say things she didn't mean. She came out of the bathroom put together again, the coat, the carry-on, the version of herself that faced the world with a particular kind of surface. But she poured her own coffee and didn't rush it, which meant something. Delia rushed everything that didn't matter to her. She stood at the drafting table while the coffee was still too hot to drink, looking at the mill drawings, not touching them, just looking the way she looked at things she was actually thinking about. The way in is through the east facade, she said. The original loading dock. That's the part that was built last and altered most, and it's the one that's hiding what the building was trying to be from the start. I looked at the drawings. I looked at them again. She was right. She was completely and obviously right in the way things become obvious the moment someone says them. I had been looking at the mill's history from the interior out. She had looked at the drawings for 4 minutes over a coffee and walked in through the side door. How did you told me about it in the car, she said. I just kept thinking about it. She drank her coffee by the east-facing windows. The light was coming in clean after the rain, and it fell across the drafting table and across her, and I stood at the kitchen counter and watched it and thought, there it is. The thing about Delia Marsh had never been that she wasn't right for me. It had been that we had both needed things from the version of ourselves we couldn't quite find room to be at the same time, and one of us had said so before the other was ready to hear it. I walked her to her car. The east facade, I said. The east facade, I said. She put her carry-on in the trunk and turned around. The morning was cold and clean after the rain. She looked at me the way she had been looking at things all morning, like she was reading what was there before someone else's decisions covered it over. If I called again sometime, she said, not from an airport, not because I needed something. Just, if I called, I'd answer, I said. She held that for a moment. Okay, she said. Good. She got in the car and drove away. I watched the street settle back to quiet. Then I went upstairs and stood at the drafting table and looked at the mill drawings and let myself begin to see what she had seen. The east facade, the loading dock, the door the building had been waiting for someone to find. Some things you restore by understanding what they were always trying to be. Some things restore themselves if you stop covering them over and give them time and the right light. I had spent 12 years knowing the difference, professionally. The personal version was taking me longer. I picked up a pencil. Have you ever gotten a call out of nowhere from someone you thought was in your past, and found yourself saying yes before you'd finished deciding? And have you ever let someone back in, not all the way, not right then, but enough to leave the door a little open, and felt the difference between that and closing it for good? Tell me your story in the comments. If this one stayed with you, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.